Hey everyone. So thanks for joining today. I spoke a couple of minutes before. Maybe I just briefly explain um, that everything I'm talking about today is from the interviews I've done recently. So all the topics you get from this conversation about technology stacks and the things that people are using is up to date.
You are muted.
Ele tá mutado.
Sorry about that. Thanks again. So I'll just briefly explain that everything I'm presenting here is up to date. I've been interviewing people, talking to people from Google, Volvo, different big companies and small companies, how people are using technology stacks. And yeah, I'd appreciate you guys also, anybody here can ask me questions either here or later after the meeting. Um, I'm Farshad. Currently, I'm working as the product owner at Create.io, and I've been in the topic of AI and data for around 14 years. So, Adeline, would you please let me share the screen? Okay. Okay, it could be that I need to reopen the Google Chrome in order to allow it. I'll just be back in a second. Good to go. Yes. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I'll try to share my presentation. Presentation is mainly for everyone to follow. It's not so much the content itself. Yeah. Right. I'm Farshad. I'm currently the product manager at Create.io. And Crate itself is a database. So it's a highly scalable database, and it is made for querying large amount of data very quickly. Mainly focus is time series and also the text. And I'm going to speak a little bit more later about the use cases of different technology stacks, and also how databases play a role in this day and age of AI. So my background is engineering, actually. So I think most of the people here are also coming from STEM. I've been told I studied electrical engineering in a good university in Tehran and control and systems. And then afterwards, I moved to England to do my PhD. So in that time, I learned about image processing techniques and also things about AI. Those times, 14 years ago, the topic of neural networks was almost on the same level as statistical techniques. And again, like these days, we hear so much about AI and large language models. And one of the things that I want to cover also in this um, basically presentation is I thought if I was in the position of somebody who wanted to enter in the data field and there were so many topics or so much noise also around this topic, how would I pick which direction I want to go? And that's how I basically wrote this presentation. So I hope everyone finds it useful. It's a short presentation, and I'm open to any questions, whether you want to write it here or later. So as I've written here, The main question that I wanted to answer is where can I play in this field of data and AI, and how can I differentiate between the hype and what is my interest and skills. So I put on purpose this picture of Ikigai, which is one of the systems that I really like to identify which direction I want to go, because it's always question of passion, what I'm really interested in, and what is my skills. And sometimes the passion can be bigger than what your skills are, and you can overcome this learning gap. And sometimes you can use the what you know from engineering in order to apply it for data and AI. I can remember a good example of this for myself. When I came from electronics engineering to image processing, I started being more attentive towards image processing techniques that are using frequency analysis or wavelet analysis, and the things that I would understand based on what I learned in my electronics engineering course. And I can imagine that somebody who also studies chemistry or medicine, they have different perspectives on data. And that's what really makes the data feel so interesting and captivating for most of us these days. And one more thing is about what we consider as AI and data processes these days is from the old times, from the traditional times. It has 4 or 5 different stages. Whenever we have data, we have to get the data from somewhere. So we know all about data collection. We hear a lot about scraping because internet has become the source that we collect most of our data. But it's not necessarily the case. And many of the interesting cases are the ones these days coming as sensor data or manufacturing, especially because it is getting easier for us to monitor things in manufacturing, for transportation, in our houses, and also applications of security, and basically everywhere you can access data. And as I will be speaking in other slides, when I'm talking about companies, we don't have access to all of this data. And this is what identifies some of the career route decisions that we make. So the next step is, after collecting data, the pre-processing of data. And a good example of this is the textual data that we currently see a lot being talked about, like large language models and things like that. If we work with logs of servers or computers, we need to clean the data. And if any case, time series or manufacturing data where there is noise, we need to clean the data. The next step, which is feature engineering, is more evident for me as I was doing image processing. So from the images, in those days, we had to capture the edges of an object inside an image. This is becoming less of a topic these days because of the appearance of neural networks. What the neural networks are promising us is that we don't need to really feature engineer our data. The neural networks is taking care of this, but as we are realizing also neural networks are not so easily traceable. What we are doing is we are also collecting these features in order to be able to look at the models. Then we have also creation of the models that does work for us. This is the main part in AI, and the models has input and output, and these days becoming more and more important to record these inputs and outputs in order to be able to track the performance of our models. And one more part is the deployment and production of the models. And this is where especially the topic of ML ops is coming. So the appearance of engineers which have more skills also on the cloud, on the engineering side is a big topic. Recently, I did an interview, an interview with a company that is doing ML ops as a separated service for ML engineers, because some of the ML engineers like us, we just want to do low code and no code ML engineering, and we don't have so much knowledge of the cloud, and that's why there are no services like for example, MindsDB, that is taking care of all of the connections to the different databases, automation, and even data collection for us. So when it comes to working with data and making a decision which direction we want to go, there's usually two main questions. Do we want to go for a cloud infrastructure, or do we want to put everything on the local computer or have a server here? And also through talking to people, mostly these questions are answered based on the security, especially in Europe. If we have a cybersecurity application, or if you have an application that is tracking, for example, expenses, things that are related to finances, we put those things on-prem, and it makes basically this decision is what makes all of the subsequent decisions different. I give you an example. For example, I talked to somebody who was doing security for airports, and they are looking at the luggages. So they choose Google Stack because they need to do things such as PyTorch or TensorFlow. And then based on this, well, because everything on Google is communicating very fast, if they want to also keep the images somewhere, what they do is they keep the images on the GCS. And that is how one decision can basically create subsequent decisions. Why is this important for you to know when you want to choose a career in data science? The difference is, and I'm going to just jump to the next slide for a second. The difference is that based on what sort of company you want to work for, or the size of the company, usually these stacks are predefined for you. And a good example is corporate companies. Usually these companies are working with Microsoft stack. The reason is that also Microsoft and Google and Amazon, when they started going for their clients on the same battlefield, and when they wanted to get clients for the infrastructures, Microsoft focused mostly on the B2B companies, so big companies. I would say the same thing is happening in manufacturing. When you want to go for a manufacturing company, they usually have a Microsoft stack. And of course, this is a very gross generalization, but you get the picture. In the early stage companies, we have more flexibility of what we want to choose, especially if you go for a venture, which is only a couple of people, they still don't have any funding, or early stage companies, which is seed round. If you want to choose a new technology to try, let's say an open source, as a data scientist or a data person, then usually you're more flexible to try those things. And with the latest stage, your stack is pretty much predefined. A lot of the times when it comes to earlier stage companies, engineers choose something that they're comfortable with. Many cases, they choose AWS because it's a solid stack. Sometimes Google because they want to do machine learning, and these are the decision choices that basically identifies your career. I'm going back to here. And then I put the learning styles also here as a point. Because based on how we are also learning, we choose the job that we take. So if you're in a position that you're wondering whether you want to learn through the online sources or you want to go for internships and freelancing, and I guess this is a topic of serious, and they have more knowledge on this, I would say it also really depends on your learning style. And what I can say more about this is I personally really like internships for quick understanding of technology. I've done it many times before, even after 12 years of experience. I was still doing internships for people to things about hardware and different things. So I'm coming to this slide, and I think this would be where I'm spending most of my time in, talking about different technologies and how it is connected to my current job. So as I said, I'm working for a database company. At the moment, I'm working on a AI strategy for the company, which means that my job is to talk to many people who are using AI in their daily job. We're planning to go to market with AI, and I'm asking them what sort of technology stacks they're using. And then I'm talking also to our engineers to understand about the core technology of our database. And then I'm trying to find where our database, based on the characteristics that it has, can fit. Now, this is a job that not only I have to learn about the core of the database and how the database is written, but also about other databases in the market. And in addition to the databases in the market, we have to learn about everything that is coming around it. Now, this picture, I've taken it from internet, and what this is showing me is a good categorization of everything across data, you know. And I think we basically know, most of us, that there's got to be a database, and we know that there's got to be some sort of dashboard, whether it's bespoke and we write it ourselves, or we use Tableau or Power BI. I guess we heard it. Yeah. And although there is very many possibilities and options which sort of databases we choose, normally when somebody comes and they want to choose a database, that becomes a question which can result in a decision of the obvious choice. You know, I usually say in technology choices, we have the obvious choice. If the obvious choice can answer our requirements, then we choose that. And then later, maybe we come to a problem, and then we have to change the technology choice, or we choose something as additional next to it. And an example of this is that a friend of mine who is doing AI now on large body of text. So what they are doing is they are collecting data from the profiles of people with their different experiences, and they try to match it with the job description using large language models. And as the text is growing, they're realizing that they need things like Elasticsearch to be able to do sanity checks. And sanity checks that doesn't take hours and hours. So you can do these sanity checks also on text with MongoDB, let's say. But MongoDB is not written in a way that you can scale up so easily. And then you need other technologies that connect to things such as S3 in order to do this task for you. So before I go deep here, I want to ask just who has worked with cloud here? Maybe you can just write a yes, so I understand the percentage of people who worked with cloud. Okay, so maybe mhm, mhm. That's a great start. So no problem. I can explain a little bit. Um, thank you for this, Adelaide. I would say maybe I just go take one step back and talk about a specialist versus generalist. I would say I consider myself as generalist, and maybe if I guess correctly, Arnobio could be also a generalist because he knows so much about different technologies. And I worked, of course, with some technologies and I know them very well. But I would say even after 14 years today, Adeline wrote me, are you ready for the presentation? And I asked myself, am I ready for the presentation? Maybe I will never be ready for the presentation because AI is such a huge field that I think no one would be able to keep track of what's going on. And we can know about different technologies and we can guess which technology would fit in a way, but it's a big topic. So I guess what would help is having a lot of conversations between people who are interested and talking about technologies. So I mean, one thing that would help you choose your career route is to identify whether you are a person that likes to go deeper in one technology or whether you like to be more of a generalist. And maybe you don't know at the moment, but over time, this is something that you can pay attention to. So some people are generally, they like, I want to go to the next one, Linux geek versus scientist, And I would say some people just are interested in the systems. They like to see black screens and text. And I would call them Linux geeks. Some people like to go through a lot of text and read about research, different algorithms, and I would call them scientists. So I think this is another categorization that shows which route you can choose in data. And then you have the researchers versus developer. This is becoming more and more clear because developers are what we identify these days a lot of data scientists, and researchers are what we used to call in older times as ML researchers or ML engineers because they would know more about the mathematics of how the models are built. And these are becoming much more closer, of course, but it is also something that identifies which route you want to go in. Cross-disciplinary experts. I think this would be most of us here because you're coming from a STEM background and you're coming with the knowledge that you can apply to data. This is really valuable. And of course, like based on where you're coming from and also the emerging technologies in your field, you would be able to choose a couple of things that are hype or is really necessary and you can focus on. For example, the topics that I can say now, genome sequencing is something that they need a lot of data scientists on. Because the people who know about genetics and the people who can do data analysis on large body of text are not that many. And the same thing comes to manufacturing or things such as failure prediction on electric motors and batteries, as you know. because of the topic of electric cars. So I think the cross-disciplinary is also becoming more important. And then there's the topic of architects. So architects would be people who have a couple of years of experience in AI and data science, and then they know how to put the technology stack together in order to make something possible. Yeah. So let's say in the example that I gave you from my friend who is doing text analysis on large body of text. There's the question of where do I put all of this text in order for the company not to have to pay so much. So in this case, you can choose something like cold storage. And then how would I read this data in order to have the same performance as I need for the application? So the solution they came up with in this case was using S3 with a Spark. And many people are using this S3 and Spark because Spark is distributing the read of data. And S3 is something that is called the cold storage, and it can organize the data, and it doesn't cost as much as something else like a database or an optimized database. And, excuse me, the disadvantage of this approach, let's say, is that if you put something on a cold storage and you want to manipulate the data, it's not as easy as if you manipulate the data in a database. So the decision choices are the decision-making process for an architect is very important, that the architect knows about the pricing of things, the architect knows about the usefulness of different technologies. For example, is Elasticsearch good for text? Yeah. Is it scalable? Yes. Cassandra scalable? Yes. Is MongoDB as a scalable? I would say no. And how close do I want to be to data? Things when you're choosing dashboards, so I use Power BI, I use Tableau. I would say, okay, Power BI is a Microsoft technology. It's easier to use on Windows machines. They have, of course, cloud offering too. So I'm giving examples. Maybe I'm not 100% correct about this. Um, um, Tableau, I use cross-platform, so it was easier. Which one would I choose for solving this problem? Then the question of orchestration platforms. So these are open source. And with open source project, I would say just try out different technologies that catches your eyes and you feel interested in. Because usually through this open source platforms, open source technology, you would also find interesting people to talk to. These are normally underground people, really smart people who just want to develop something, because in open source community, you not always get financial reward. Sometimes you do because somebody sees that you're doing an amazing thing, so you get involved in more projects. But at the beginning, somebody has to be really interested in these technologies. So I would say another way to connect to interesting people that are not on LinkedIn is open source. And then again, when it comes to AI and ML, these days we have two categories of technologies. You hear about PyTorch a lot. Everybody I spoke to that is more or less doing large language models or image processing, they're using PyTorch these days. And because of PyTorch and because Google is a leading figure in it, a lot of people go to Google Cloud to use things like Vertex AI and BigQuery and run their models on Google. So that also identifies a big technology choice if people want to use AI. And then regarding processing, it depends on how much data you have. So this is the field that I'm doing more research on these days. I can speak a bit more about it. Depending on what type of data you have, if it's text data, if it's unstructured data, or if it's images, you would choose your database. Now, the amount of data is also identified which database you would choose. And at the beginning of the projects, especially if people don't have experience, they would go for a technology that is maybe not as scalable. And I think I gave an example of MongoDB. So it's an easy entry, you know, it's got a good documentation and it's a very old database. Or another example of this is Postgres, because Postgres is very solid database. It is used for years and there's a good community around it. And people choose this. And then after using it for a while, maybe they get into a bottleneck. Maybe the data grows and then they have to use a new technology. Now, depending on what is the resources in terms of finances, if a company has millions and they have a requirement that they need to run things real time, usually they choose things such as Kafka, or if they're doing trading in hedge funds, let's say, they use things such as Oracle. In manufacturing, Kafka is used a lot because it's a streaming data, it is in memory, and it is also treating the data in different queues and channels, which is the nature of having multiple sensors. Oh, I have a question, but give me a moment. I finish this point and then I can answer the questions also. Um, then Kafka is one of them. Oracle is one of them that we are using for fast queries and complex data formats, as well as now there's a lot of conversation around Redshift and Redis because of their in-memory capabilities. And most of the applications we use, we don't need to do real-time processing. So in those cases, I would say any database would work, depending on unstructured or structured data. But again, we can talk about this if you have any questions also offline. So I see there's a couple of questions. Maybe I start with answering those. What do you think, Adile? So I have one question from Enoch. What is what is the relation of what I'm doing? I'm an engineer in my job. So very good question. My job is at the moment to look at the technology we have inside the company, which is a highly scalable database, and also talk to ML engineers to find out if they need such a database. You know, our database is fast. It can host different types of data. So it can host text, it can host time series. And of course, this is used in AI. But in AI, how can I say it? When you're training large language models, it needs a lot of processing power, but not so much data. You know, so what we call these applications is CPU bound, not IO bound. So I'm doing a research to basically help with the strategy of the company in terms of AI, whether it would be useful for the company to do anything in that field or whether we just have to stay a database company. So that I hope I answered your question. Rogerio, if I pronounced your name correctly, what do you think of the Power BI? I would say like I use Power BI very briefly, and when it comes to dashboards, I would say most of them have more or less the same functionality. Um, there is three different dashboards that are now being talked about a lot. One is Tableau, one is Power BI, one is Looker. So Looker was a separate company. Now it is part of Google, and it's very powerful, I would say. It works with Google technologies very well. Power BI and Tableau are more generalistic, and I wouldn't differentiate between them. I would go for Power BI if I'm working with the Microsoft stack, Microsoft computer. And if I'm using Mac, I use Tableau, but that's my personal opinion. So there's no more questions. Please, please, yes. It's a very good question. I mean, there's a philosophical answer to this, and there's the, and really, really, it is very personal. You know, I could, of course, like, Miguel, please go on, ask your questions. I could really talk about this on a technical level with every single person in this group, and maybe if I hear about what you've done in the past, I can point out easier where to start. But I would say what really, really matters is because everything we are learning, whether it's a language or technology, because it needs a lot of effort, we need some sort of obsession to get there. And the thing is that we already know what is our obsession, but we don't want to pay attention to it sometimes, you know. When I started my PhD, I kind of got into image processing and CCTV cameras and analysis of images. And then I spent 2 years reading all of the papers to find out whether that's the perfect topic for me or something else. And at the end, I chose the same topic, you know. They say dialectic, you know, dialectic is like a way of like getting perspectives from many people. They say sometimes you go back to the first point, you know. So sometimes we know exactly, okay, we are interested in dashboards or we are interested in databases or operating systems, and we just need to go deeper into it. So wherever we start in this technology stack, it doesn't matter if we start on AI or on the presentation layer or databases. At some point, we get to know other parts of the stack, you know, but usually there is a question of time limitation too. So people say, okay, but I want to learn it in 3 months, 4 months. I would say getting an internship and getting a job, and through that, learning is the best way. But of course, like if I didn't answer your question, I would love to maybe have a conversation with people individually to be able to give them an answer. Miguel, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm formulating the question. Jadson, you can go, please.
Okay, so thank you, Farshad, for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. My question is about feature engineering in the previous slide. What are the main skills you see for feature engineering, and what is exactly the difference for general data analyst role?
What is your background, Jetson?
So I work with data already, but I did a area migration last year, so I'm new in the data area.
I didn't get what was your background? Engineering or
Okay. I'm really data analyst.
data analyst? Okay,
Yes.
so you come from a data background and you want to get more into feature engineering.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so when you talk about feature engineering, it's really depending on the type of data you're working with. And it depends, like if you talk about text, for example, nowadays, should I focus on one of them or should I speak more generally on text, images, and time series, for example? Okay, so let's say like the three main data types that everybody's talking about is text, images, and time series. Time series are less talked about, but everything is time series because everything is sequences. So we have to know how to treat time series. Time series and images are pretty similar. You know, if you look at the images, we are working with the same sort of feature engineering things such as frequencies, and a lot of the algorithms that were also analyzing features inside images, they were designed based on the concept of how we are looking at frequencies. Because it's all like tinges. So if you want to detect edges in the image, it was about how different channels of images are changing. And if this is showing us a feature such as edge, that is important for us. When it becomes the topic of time series, we are talking about the similar things because it's about the frequency of change. And then there's more complex techniques such as wavelets that we look at. Wavelet is similar to frequencies too. Now, which one would we choose? I would say we need to learn about all of the important ones. How would we learn the important ones? So there's a word of material, but for me, what worked was to look at the MATLAB help. MATLAB is a simulation program. I don't know if any of you used it. It's got amazing documentation. And what they've done is they've really extracted what are the most important techniques there, and they put it in a very, very simplified language. I think if any of you can get an education license of MATLAB, I really recommend you get it and just try some things out inside because it's really to use, easy to use. And one last thing I didn't talk about is the text analysis. So when it comes to text, one question is what are the important words inside the body of the text? Because anybody can say, I look at the English text and I say, these sort of words are not important, so I throw them out. And then I end up with the most important words for any document. But then again, based on the context that we are looking at, there is words that are super important. Like I look at artificial intelligence. So if I look at the document of artificial intelligence, the words data processing, these sort of things become important. And for those things, now there are techniques such as BERT transformers that focus on a specific part of the text based on the context that you're working on. And then also in the text engineering field, there's a big topic about vector stores and looking at how basically are the similarity of documents, not only by matching the words, but also based on how close we think words are in semantic and symbolic way. So I hope I answered your question, but of course I'm also available if you want to ask offline something.
Oh, I got the general idea. Thank you, Farshad.
Thanks, Justin. Miguel?
Uh, Hello, are you listening me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you.
I'm question you. Yeah, a difficult, a difficult one, but I hope you can help me. So, how can someone that are in the beginning of a business, like in a startup or like in a, it's a startup, but it's innovation work, but I'm working and with a team that are not from tech area. I'm the only one, and I'm just fresh on the market. I'm recent grad, but uh, I'm someone that they can trust. So they trust me, and I think the trust relations are the the main point of a business or shareholders and revenue. But I know that I can't be everything. I can't be the guy that will develop everything, like the tech, the engineer, because we are in beginning. So I need to be with them on the strategy, like business and whatever. Like and so, uh, I saw your experience. You have been in startups. You were founder. You had your own company, but I'm like afraid because they trust me, and I know this is the most important, but I need to help them, and I don't know how exactly.
Miguel, this is perfect. It's not actually a very good question because we are talking about things like technology that feels very solid and is very machinistic, but on the most important thing is the human emotions and connections and how you work with people. And of course, at some point, maybe we have machines writing our code, so it won't matter. So, but still, the human emotions and connections is important. You mentioned that I was a CTO and a founder. You're absolutely right. And if you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would say I failed miserably. And but it doesn't. It what's important is that I learned a lot and I got appreciations from a lot of people who worked with me, although I felt that it didn't work out. And the reason I thought it didn't work out is because I thought it's going to make millions and it didn't. But the process itself of working with people, getting to know people, and knowing that you have the whole life to stay connected to these people, and wherever you go, that means that you will be connected to the whole world. I'm talking to some people that are sitting in Brazil. You know, how amazing is that? So you feel like you want to be a trustworthy person. You are a trustworthy person. So you put that in your work as your intention and it comes out. And if things didn't work out, it's a process. So you would go to the next level and you keep the connection to the people you're working with.
Okay.
So that's what I think. I think maybe not so much of an answer you expected,
No,
but
I got it. I got it. I got it. The most important. Okay. Thank you.
thanks. All right. I was maybe just prepared on a slide that I wasn't sure I'm going to present, but yes, please, Anuki.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wrote the question, but I will speak it. I think it will be easy to understand. I'm a senior software engineer. I have a lot of background in IT area, and I'm just starting in the S area also, but I don't know which path I will choose. Which one is more alike to a software engineer job mixed with DevSecOps, something like that? Can you?
Are you senior software engineer and you're developing Java and you have DevOps experience? Yeah. I mean, what you're telling me is you're also comfortable with Linux and infrastructure.
Yeah, also, I have a lot of
So, I
experience in
mean,
this.
this what you're telling me. I mean, depending on if you're interested in more a strategy work, or if you're interested in architecture work, or for example, more staying in tech side. If you like to stay in touch with technology and development, this seems to me that you're closer to MLOps, but probably you know that already.
For example, as I asked before, ML engineer, it's more likely to a software engineer position, or no? Just to understand, because
If
it's
you are
for
a
me,
software engineer, you could go towards the direction of AI engineer. For example, if you like to develop models, or you could go to the direction of ML ops.
okay,
So
thank you.
setting up infrastructure for people who want to do machine learning.
Will be more a mix of development and infrastructure, for example.
Yeah, but these two roles are becoming more and more separate these days.
Okay, thank you.
Like in the companies I worked with, I've talked to 3 different companies, and they are basically separating these two: ML ops and, machine learning. So it depends on, but you don't have to choose it also. You can start working and see what you're attracted to.
Like when
Yeah.
I start in graduation.
Yeah, I mean, there's some parts of it that you can choose because you're applying for jobs or you're doing certain things, but also sometimes you go work for a company that you really like, and then, as you know, the career can change direction. But I am these days talking to people who are doing MLOps, and I think it's a very interesting topic because if you have the cloud background and infrastructure background, then there's a lot of problems about infrastructure that people choose random technologies, and maybe that could be an area that is kind of having a gap these days.
Yeah, I'm diving to cloud also to enforce this knowledge. So I guess will be both beneficial for my current position and for the S in the future. So I guess cloud, as I saw, cloud it's very important also to
Have a look
choose
at
the.
MindsDB.
Sorry.
There's a company, MindsDB. What they are doing is MLOps for machine learning engineers. So you can check what sort of things they are doing to get an idea of MLOps. MindsDB. They
Oh,
also
okay.
work with us.
And certifications in data science, it's important. There are some that are more considered in the field.
I think
What do you
it's
think about it?
not if you're a good developer, I think it's not even important if you finish university these days. Because I see really, really good developers that they just. I spoke to somebody who was just a Python developer, and then he worked for the Anglo-American mining company doing image processing, and then afterwards, right now, on a big project for securities at airports, things like object detection. And he came from the software side, and he went more towards being a hobbyist AI developer. He got one of these boxes at home, and he started doing image processing, and then from there he got his first job, second job. So I think if you're a good software developer, you have a good chance. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
So before I go to, I think I can answer Aurelio, because you're asking whether you need mathematics. Not necessarily. I think these days a lot of things are API based, or a lot of things are packages. And depending on how much you're interested in math, you can go deep inside it, but you don't have to. We have also Vinorly, if I'm pronouncing correct.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your time and for being here with us. Well, my background is on international business administration and also e-commerce. and I'm dealing right now with outsourcing and procurement. So I do have a good background on this, but no background at all on IT, data science, and or engineering. Let's say like
Okay.
this. So my question is, how to join my background on these new opportunities that we are having now with artificial intelligence, and how do you see this marketing, I mean, from supply chain, business administration, associated um, with those opportunities on artificial intelligence and data science? What I mean is, how can we connect all that stuff? And if you have um, any news, I mean, if you know something on the market for this kind of background.
I just thanks for asking the question. I just need to understand exactly what the topic is because it's maybe something I haven't worked with in the past or I don't know. So what sort of data do you work with in your job?
Uh, Now we use his Tableau to
Yeah.
extract data from, for example, contracts and
Uh-huh.
day-to-day purchasing. Okay, trying, for example, to match what we get from the past with future opportunities. I mean, trying to foresee what's about to come. It's like that.
So forecasting is something that you're doing to. I can give an example, real world example. You know, I spoke to somebody in Volvo. You know, so Volvo is 100,000 people company, and the number of things that we're doing from tracking, for example, Volvo cars, to forecasting whether the car is going to break down, you know, or looking at the color on the engines to see where the color is wear off with the image processing. And things, what else can I think of? Yeah, I mean, these are good examples. You can think about anything. Like I spoke to somebody else that they were working with banks, and what they are doing is analyzing logs on the computers of the people who are using bank. And what they want to make sure is that everything works perfectly. So site reliability. Any use case that you can think of, okay, what can I improve in my workspace? Where is the data? That is where AI can work. You know, AI is, I think these days talked about something that is going to remove humans out of circulation. I really don't think that is the case because still we are interacting with AI, we are taking actions or making improvements or being creative how to use it. So I think anywhere that you can see data at work, um, you can come up with an innovation of yourself. So, yeah. Let's talk about this more, maybe offline. Also,
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
thanks, Lou. I have to say that although the time is at an end, I hope it was useful. I really enjoyed it. And I really also thank you, Adeline, for organizing this session. Thanks. Thanks. It was a pleasure, really. Pleasure. See you, everyone.
Bye bye. Take care. See ya.